Anyway, I really want to, first of all, thank everybody from Barnes & Noble for doing a great job helping me get this event together, and I want to thank Brett. And I hope, while you're around, you browse and shop. They got such great stuff in the store. A little plug for them, okay? So, thank you, Barnes & Noble. Anyway, I'm going to read for about a half an hour, and if anybody wants to get a copy of the book, hasn't gotten a copy, I'll be signing afterwards, and we'll talk a little bit, and then I'll do another reading maybe about 20 minutes after that for any of you latecomers, or we'll go grab some people just to fill seats against their will. One way or the other, I'm going to have an audience, damn it. So, anyway, I'm going to read a variety of stuff from the different sections of the book. The book is actually a compilation of all my little chapbooks that I created over the past decade or so. There's 11 different sections, and they're all about different things. So I tried to spread it out, give you a little bit of range of different subjects. And wrote a long, long time ago in a galaxy far, far away called my 20s. So this first one is kind of a summary about why I started writing and the reaction to people when they started hearing that I was actually writing poetry. Anyway, it's called The Music of the Spheres. My friends, tired and half-emptied amid the vacant stemware and the long night, said that they could not see me as a poet. I, definite as a cigarette, said that they should not think of me as a poet, frail, a kind of vaudeville of the moon, but rather that I am the victim of language, the foster child of adjectives, for I am the breath of soft roots. My dreams are the dreams of swizzle sticks. I go about the world mad as daffodils. For me, the darkness makes all distinction. In turn, they turned and answered that the earth had had its fill of Keats, that the participles could dangle without me. I directed them to the window, drew back the quiet curtains, and pointing, told them to note the precision of the stars, the certainty of the moon, and so on and so on. I said that we must not so calmly restrain the skin in these marvelous seconds of self-destruction. I led them outside. The night brooded all about us. And there we stood in silence, listening to the winter wind as it whistled through the beard on my timeless chin.
Yay. Nice.
Thank you very much. A little louder?
Just a little louder. There's a lot of noise behind us.
Okay, I'll try to scream. Echo Park!
Yeah, Echo Park.
This next poem is about a place in LA when we grew up with here, my family. It holds a lot of memories for all of us, and I'm dedicating this especially to my dear friend Sergio Alvarez, who is a dear friend of the family who's struggling right now with lung cancer. I called him this morning and told him I was going to read it to him in his memory. And I told him we want to try to have it online so he can see it. So this is for Sergio. Anyway, Echo Park is a place near downtown LA, and it's a really lovely old spot. It's still there, but I haven't been there in, 50, 60 years. But it's like places in your heart are like frozen there. And you remember them in a certain way so that the memory is the same thing as being there. So this poem is about that kind of experience. It's called Echo Park. Here are the old men on benches by the boathouse playing cards, and the woman asleep in grass at the water's edge with a bag of groceries at her side, and people in canoes and motorized boats scattered out on the lake. And on the other side, a couple of kids fishing near the lily pads, clustered down toward the end of the park where the shoreline forms a small lagoon and the ducks gather to paddle around. This is the lake where David drowned when he and Ray went swimming when they were drunk one night. And once 18th Street and the Night Lads had it out in the corner of the park where Bellevue meets Echo Park Avenue and Stinky Felix was painted all over the walls. I spent a lot of the summer there when I was young, but now that world seems more to me like those small, inscrutable landscapes children build around electric trains, where everything is incidental but exact and fastened in its place, than like any place I've ever been. Can we only indulge in the world and not correct it? Perhaps even my grandfather, who used to sit by that anonymous statue late at night for so many years before they tore it down, and drink his wine and play his mandolin, could not answer either yes or no, though he looked out on everything there with a slow eye which seldom admired, seldom loved.
Yeah, good part.
Well, my grandpa, who used to, at 89, went on a second childhood binge, and he was drinking, and he was playing a mandolin. He dressed up in a suit, smoked stogies. I mean, it was a strange thing to watch.
That's where the sweet gang started.
That's right. That's where the gang started. Okay, well, all of you, well, most of you here know or met my wife, Mary, and a whole section of the poems I've written are about Mary. There's a whole book called Mary's Gift in the book. And not all the poems are in that one section. I've sprinkled some other ones, but these next three are connected directly to Mary. And I was telling Brian, yesterday actually was 40 years to the date where I met my wife. I remember that. I was back in Iowa City. So after I left Iowa and got my degree, I stopped writing. I just got tired of school, I stopped writing, and I was happy, because I met the woman who I loved, and I didn't need to write for a while. But when we moved to Tucson in 1982, I wrote my first poem in like 4 years, and it was dedicated to her. We went hiking in the foothills, and it's a poem about just sort of re-experiencing each other in a new environment, and it's called Sonoran Canto. Against the stone panorama, the sky leans in the heat. From the foothills, the valley seems to undulate like the sea. As we walk toward the peaks, the saguaros emulate an army of atlases, and families of quail skitter through the washes in patterns astoundingly serpentine. We have come here from the reassuring green of California, the home where as a child I would so often run away to the thundering comfort of the sea. But this miraculous terrain irritates all complacencies, and I watch as your body grows hotter and navigates the eddies of the air. Your timeless Nordic temperament, now perpetually thawing, you take all the desert in as you move, and you seem so grateful to be so agitated, though in Iowa you grew, oh, so comfortably cold. We have been together long enough in all sorts of weather, and have excelled equally well everywhere. And like everywhere, this home is home for now. It will please me to watch us laugh at our ever and growing indifference to the atmosphere, which, though well beyond the boundaries of all love, is just another ultimatum we will not answer to, and in whose empty heart we reside, and will happily never matter. Thank you. Well, and as most of all of you know, my wife died of cancer in 1999. It devastated me, changed my whole life. And I left my job, and after a while of just kind of floundering, I started writing again. And some of the earliest poems were obviously dealing with my grief, my trying to understand my new life without my wife. Anyway, this poem is one of those things where I was in a desperate place one day, and I was trying to make a psychic connection, sort of like re-experiencing her again in a way since she'd been gone for a while. And it tries to make that happen through emotion and memory and feeling. So I read this the other day at the thing, so forgive me for hearing. Hope you don't mind hearing it again. Anyway, it's called World Without. 182. And again, it's dedicated to Mary. World Without. It's in 4 sections. 1. A shaft of sunlight filtering into my room through an opening at the end of the drapes to agitate all memory. I enter it to drown in the pool of its lucent atmosphere. The space of myself has overtaken it. Within, I burst into another kind of being, and now am some whole new sense made up of nothing that I was. An amphibian of thought, a fish made out of feeling, conspiring to create another knowing, felt so deeply that any body capable of bearing it could only break. It is here the journey into you begins. 2. I move, a welcome though uninvited guest, and know the lifetime that is this moment in your eyes. Fragments form exquisite references and the remembrance of your presence in all your places. It is I, entering where you are, to feel the grass growing near the gardens in your yards. In your hand, I find what childhoods your tenderness has contained, and we celebrate the ceremony of your simplicities and the snows outside your many windows. I attend the processional of the grace that carries you to the very realms that become you as you sleep. We are surrounded by your every intimacy, and I am the shudder in the flesh where you touch yourself tenderly. The point of contact in each moment, and all fear and every light that will surrender you to your final darkness. And I am freighted with the desperation of this maritime. We are together in this, our only endlessness, a structure of spirit, a ghost made up of old anatomies. Our being now complete because of what two beings growing bodiless have become, formed to a new kind of solitude. 3. But the light which has been this residence begins to fade, and I feel myself again falling away from you. And I fear again that I must bear our old undoing and return to the world without you, wonderless and strange, like a nightmare about to be recurring, and feel the veil of sense and sorrow in the place of my returning, across the boundary where all the endings all begin again, and I encounter anew the beast of what I am. 4. Here on the edge of memory of your kiss and your embrace, this heart, uncomforted in resignation toward the darkness, beats insistently on and on again from somewhere of the depths of this enclosure, where an old and familiar silence rises and blooms like a flower in a dream about the end of every happiness I have ever known, until it closes up around whatever remains and separates me from the world that was made of us, and seals it up and surrounds it like a skin. That's the way it used to feel a lot. I mean, it still feels that way whenever I think of her, but not with the same kind of intensity and stuff. This last one that I'm going to read from the section about Mary is, I wrote it on the 5th anniversary of her death. It's called Dark Nourishment, and it's also the title poem from the section of the book called Dark Nourishment. Dark Nourishment, January 12, 2004. Mary, another year has passed, and you are dead again. Behind the light I'm looking at is a light that darkness no longer is not, wherein you sit quietly and read my heartbroken book. You are the food you have left me famished for. Let the hunger recommence, and the feeding find a new place to begin. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, well now for the lighter side. But seriously, folks. This next poem I'm going to read is from a section of poems I wrote in 2000 when I went with a good friend of mine, Mike Blue, who I went to grade school with. I know him from LA, and I dedicate this poem to him, where we went to the Big Island. The first trip I took after my wife died. We went together, and it turned into these series of these first 4 poems, which really started me on this kind of storytelling, narrative kind of poetry thing that shows up in some things. Anyway, we went to this clothing optional beach that he heard about. We managed to find it on the shore. It's pretty hard to find. There's a lot of houses, you know, where we went when we came down the coast, Rondo, and with all the trees, it was really beautiful. It's right around there. Anyway, we found this place. So this poem is about that beach. It's called Black Sand Beach. Cars are parked in every direction. I hear the pounding of the surf over the tops of trees. The lava cliffs drop deep down into the drama that is the relentless onrush of this piece of ocean. Mike is going on up ahead, videotaping everything. His footsteps on the path down to the beach, the clumps of huge black rock, some parrots, the sky at the horizon's end, everything but me. Hippies, ex-hippies, European tourists, locals and their kids, they're all here. Some are unclothed or half-clothed exhibitionists. Others look happy just to be here watching others be or being themselves tossed about in the energetic surf, fumbling in the froth, arms and asses scraping in the battle with the undertow. I have never before in the flesh seen this brilliant black granular shore, and I'm not sure if I'm enjoying the magic of this geological marvel more than the sight of so many naked, almost attractive people posturing and preening and acting as if these human forms of ours were almost bearable. What this brilliant epiphany of this almost eternal moment of man and sea and metaphor is all about, I'm not quite sure. But I'd like to go up to each and every one of them individually and thank them all for sharing the once secret regions of their skin and every excess of the flesh. Thank them for the awkward eloquence of their audacity and for their innocence and for going all the way. For I, who have so little nerve, reclining here, partially exposed, unremarkable and inconspicuous, daring only to go so far, am but a poor excuse for and specimen of man, overfleshed above the waist and undersized below, fumbling through an anxious and seemingly endless middle age, widowed and terrified, desperate for some new moment in the sun, staring at the breakers, hiding inside a bathing suit, but waiting and willing and able to drop his every sad and safe disguise if someone would only do him a favor and look. By the way, Mike did take his clothes off, so he had the power to do it. He had a better looking body. But of course, looking how I look now, you can imagine how tempting it was to just go all the way, because I know I would really set a precedent. Okay, I have something to confess. I am Italian. Yes. Italian. That terrible thing, right, Ma? It's terrible to be Italian, right, Ma? Huh? Love you. No, we're Italian, right? Okay. Well, we went to Italy together, didn't we?
I'm proud.
You are. She's proud. So am I.
My family, my mother-in-law, my father.
And your son.
Oh,
And your son.
my mom, ladies and gentlemen. Anyway,
Take my mom, please.
we went to Italy back in 2001, and what started out as a few individual little poems turned into this long interwoven narrative. And it's called Italian Chronicle, and I'm going to read the whole damn thing. You're going to sit here for 4 hours. I want to read the first poem from the section. The first place we went was to our hometown. It's called Toro. It's a little town in the Apennine Mountains. It's about a 3-hour drive from Rome. And this is about our arriving in town on our first day. So the poem is called Toro Again, because this is the second time I did it. Toro Again. The 3-hour ride from Rome has been pleasant. The soft green has begun breaking through the deep brown dormancy of the retreating winter and promises another good season of crops and wine. High on a bluff overlooking valleys on 3 sides, Toro seems to hover above the undulant green like some disassembled cubist monolith. A patchwork of surfaces made from blocks of ancient stone and multicolored plasters, an alluring three-dimensional mosaic. Every face out in the open, in the streets and in the piazza, or peering from doorways and windows, turn our way as we arrive. They know strangers when they see not much ever changes in their town. They grow thrilled with the prospect of anything new. Theirs is an eager, desperate nosiness. Mom is delighted to be back in her hometown. She hasn't been here for nearly a decade. It's been 14 years for me. We're staying with my cousins, Peppino and Giuseppina. They're both my mother's age, in their early 70s. She's their aunt by marriage. They grew up together. Mom left here when she was 22. She's been dwelling on the past of late. Her joy in this moment is utterly palpable. My emotions are somewhat mixed. My mother and cousins and the other parenti who come to visit exchange an animated, inexhaustible array of stories about how happy and difficult life was back in the old days. Stories I've heard all too often when I was a kid. My family on both sides endured their beautiful, treasured hardships in this town for generations. I mercifully did not. When asked if I was born in Italy, I tell everyone I was conceived here but came out in LA. Raised in the comfort of America, I assert that I was an Italian in utero. That really gets a laugh. I suspect that the force of character required to tolerate life on this little piece of ground was not engendered in me, though I now bear the face of one familiar, welcomed because he is family or a soon-to-be rediscovered family friend. But I know that I instinctively understand deep in my being what it means to really be one of them. I'm not just the otherworldly imposter some might think I am. As my grandmother and my parents would relate their stories when I was small, I imagine the ghosts of my already dead relatives and unknown friends reaching out across space and time to my tiny existence half a world away. Their irredeemable joys and irreparable sorrows are still a huge chunk of what I thought my soul was made of once. After everyone has talked a while and eaten, after we've settled in, Giuseppina and Mom and I decide to take a walk down the main street, Via Francalancia. It enters from the north, circles the far southern end of town between freestanding clusters of edifices, dips and ascends intermittently like some paved-over medieval roller coaster ride. As we walk, I note the incidental sounds of this place as it readies for the fall of another night. And I watch the not too far off lights of Campo Basso coming on in the distance, above the ground that now has begun darkening down in the valleys off to the west. And I feel a sweetness overtaking me. I feel like I have finally made it home. And I am making myself ready for the ghosts to come calling me again, to welcome me back into the fold of my endless family. And I await to embrace the living and all the dead and all these living whom I have always loved with all my heart without ever even knowing it. Until now. Yeah. Sure. Okay. Well, hey, Barbara, Brajo. It's my friend Brajo. She's at the back there. Glad you came, Barbara. Joseph. Awesome. Thank you for coming, man. Great to see you.
How come you didn't tell me about Black Speech when you were coaching me at the
I didn't know how to get there. I couldn't even have told you how to get there. I don't even remember. Joe just went to Hawaii, by the way, and he was emailing me. That's Joe Waback, my friend from Golden Eagle, Budweiser, whatever. He went to Hawaii over Christmas. I was telling him places to see and stuff. And he was sending me these wonderful emails about how much he enjoyed it, how great it was. Asked all the right questions, right? There is no answer to that question. Why do people leave this place? They don't. Anyway, I'm glad you're here. Thank you guys for coming. Okay, this next poem. This one's a fun one. Oh, you're not ready yet?
No, it's starting back up.
Oh, how long's it gonna be?
Like 20 seconds.
All right. Anyway, well, I'll give
Is
some
it?
preamble to this.
I don't know how much battery I have. I figure I'll make it through the first one.
Appreciate my nephews and everybody taping it. And I'm going to try to get this uploaded onto the internet so some family and across the ocean and around the country can see it too. So
You're not
I'm
going to do it
excited.
on Facebook?
No, I don't have
You're going to
Facebook.
post it. I'll post it on Facebook.
Okay? You ready to go? All right. Anyway, this is a poem about some of my nieces and nephews, two of which are
I heard about this stuff.
Tony over there, Orlando's son, and Joe, who's back there. And then my other brother Nick's two daughters, Jessie and Emma, who are not here today. Michaela, I didn't write a poem about you because you were old at that time and gone. But I was thinking about one last night that I got to read to you, just so I had something to say. By the way, my niece Michaela came all the way from Bakersfield with her husband Brett and their kids to be here.
Yay.
California. So thank you. Michaela, if you're wondering, she was born in Good Korea. She's here.
God.
She's from Good Korea. And I made up a poem for her last night because I never wrote a poem about her, so it's real short. Michaela, here it goes. Michaela is nice. Give her some rice. You're welcome.
Gonna go ahead and clip that out of this one.
This poem is about the four nieces and nephews. It's called Child's Play. The first one is page 328. The first one is for Tony. 328. Child's Play. 1. Tony. My nephew Tony is a wild and restless boy. He screeches, squeals, and loves to drive us wild. The good in him, the good and the bad of him brings twisted joy. I think he's neither man nor beast nor child. A little odd machine built to annoy. His gift is to surprise and stay unmild.
Unmild?
Unmild. That's Tony. Of course, he was only like 8 when I wrote that, but he's still the same. The second one is to Jessie, Nick's third daughter. She's living in California right now. This one's called Jessie. With long black hair and stark exotic features, she is the most inscrutable of creatures. She's been an heiress, a debutante, a queen. I can't begin to tell you all she's been. So many people with so many names, and even when she's changed, she stays the same. This one is for Emma, Nick's second daughter, who lives in Utah. It's just called Emma. They're all just called names. Behind the silence resonates a song, a vibrant world so deep and wide and long. There is so much more here than there appears, a grace that grows with all the passing years. This girl, this not yet woman, sister, daughter, haunting and simple and serene, like light on water. And the last one's for my nephew Joe, who's back there. And he was about 10 or 11 when I wrote this one, so Joe.
Get out of here,
There are
Brian.
aging, overgrown boys and unformed men. And each is part of him every now and then. Some parts of him come early, some parts are late. Sometimes he'll soothe, sometimes he'll irritate. He'll be kind and stern, and suddenly he'll laugh. For a while he's there, and then he's gone again. A changing whole made up of changing halves. To find the real Joe, what you'll have to do is wait. Child's Play. Thank you. Love you guys. Okay, the next one's page 313. I think I thought I put a marker in it, but I didn't. Anyway, oh, it fell down. Anyway, this is the last poem I put in the book. When I was compiling all the files to put in the book, and I was going through my computer, I saw that I had this title in there, and there was only like 2 or 3 lines. And I'd started, never finished it. I said, I always wanted to finish this stupid thing, so I decided to work on it for about 3 or 4 days, and I finished it, and I threw it into the book. Hey, Dale and Jen, hi.
Oh, wow.
Thank you for coming. Great to see you. Anyway, it's kind of a goofball poem, and I just wanted to throw it in there because I just felt in the mood to do it. Most of the stuff here is pretty heavy and serious, but this is one of the fun ones. It's in 6 sections, and it imagines what one of the world's icons, inanimate icons, is capable of perceiving. It's called I Know What the Sphinx Thinks. Number 1. With these stony eyes, I can read an obelisk from bottom to top or top to bottom and not break a sweat from springtime to autumn. I've spent eons here on my paws and knees, from Nubia to Karnak, Cairo to Kadesh. I've known it all and saw what Ramses sees. Okay, gotcha. 2. 3. Good evening. Take my wife. Priests etch elegies to me on enduring walls of stone, where pharaohs and their mummies, far from all the populace, in their hieroglyph necropolis, lay buried all alone, while Isis and Osiris are offered oaths of gratitude and all the usual platitudes on rolls of stale papyrus. 3. Anubis and Ammon have nothing in common, but the goddess Astarte really knows how to party. Ankhs and scarabs are admired by Arabs. If asked which they prefer, they'll swear to Thoth. They're happy to worship either or both. 4. When flooding starts on the mighty Nile, ibises and grebes prefer Memphis to Thebes, and a slave will walk a camel for a mile. Ba-da-boom! Remember that commercial? I'll walk a mile for a camel? No?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, some of the young ones.
Don't smoke.
Don't smoke. Number 5. It's not hard to grasp that beauty dies. Nefertiti was briefly pretty, while Cleopatra had a wicked asp. Though I care not for looks or for gold, Khufu's wife was a real pleaser. Old King Tut didn't die very old, but Khufu was a real geezer. The girl. 6. Everybody makes a fuss about that guy Ozymandias, but when everything else just falls away, I'll still be here thinking till the judgment day. I'm not just another pretty face, though someone hid my nose someplace, and I've accomplished nothing without even trying. If I said I thought otherwise, you know I'd just be lying. Okay. Thank you. Okay. Next one, actually, it's a section full of a series of small poems, which are all haikus. And for those of you who may not know, haiku is a Japanese form of Twitter. It's a short poem. The first line is 5 syllables. The second line is 7 syllables, and the last line is 5 syllables. And usually, the last line has a little twist on the end of the first 2 lines that comment on it. Anyway, this is a whole series of little haikus that I've written and accumulated in a series called Series 575. And I'm going to read a selection of them, okay? First one's called To Be Always a God. The stars are my eyes, the planets, all darknesses, my periphery. This one I wrote after Mary died. It's called In Memory of 2 Deaths. The hour you were gone was the moment I ended. My ghost keeps going. This was called An Enlightenment. Seek greater knowledge. Live more intelligently. Die better informed. This one's called Poem to Reassure the Masses. The world's not our friend. We breathe and eat, dream and die. Now, get back to work. This one's called To the Reader. My words want to live. They tremble. They long to see. Give them permission. This one's called The Blind Man Steps Outside. The air so fresh, sky so black and endless. Come look, the sun is on fire. This one's called The Harpist. Waterfall of notes, sponges. This one's called Body Language. What I'm emptied of, I long to be re-restored. Fill this shell with love. Let's see. This one's called Metaphysical Impediment. Though heart, soul, and mind may sing of limitlessness, its boundaries they love. This one's called Both Worlds. What is housed inside the heart? What's best remembered and what's best forgot? Let's see. Okay, here's a couple I wrote for my dear friend Brian over there. It's called the Brian Sequence. I wrote it when I was back visiting them in Vermont. So these three are all about Brian, for Brian. I love you, Brian. Brian Sequence. Number 1, redhead, freckle face, Yankee Doodle doing flips. Don't grow up again. 2, teddy bear, cute kid eating up the man within. Happy cannibal. And Brian does some incredible stuff with wood, as most of us here know. He has a thing where his business is called Timeless Woodcraft. So this is called Timeless Woodcraft. The artist's hand molds the afterlives of branches, beauty from a tree. And this one is for Ryan. I only wrote one for Ryan, because after I read this to her, she slapped me and said, never do that again. It's called Ryan. This hard, edgy blonde navigates the boat of night, not the girl next door. Okay, and I got 2 more. This second to last one, these poems are both about, how many here have been in horrible relationships?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah? Okay, we all know what that's about. Well, this was my relationship from hell. It was love and hate and everything for about a 2-year period. And my brothers know who this refers to. This gal named Margot, who I was madly crazy in love long before I met Mary. And it was just awful. We were always out of sync, always on the wrong page, but when it worked, boy, it was great. Anyhow, I took me a long time to get over her, and a lot of things had to happen before that happened. But anyway, this is kind of a summary about kind of how our relationship was. It's called Requiem for an Amorist. I always thought love was this sick self-abasement for a mutual good. Not caring for myself, I knelt at our altar and reveled in my shame, humiliating myself for what I thought was best for the both of us. This was love, after all. You didn't see me in any of it, your life, when I was there. I was like a guppy in a teardrop, or a kitten underwater. I lived for you and lost when we got what we wanted. Now I know I was right. I made you better in the few fresh moments where we paused on your way up as I was going down. Now I'm here where I belong, resting at the bottom. The descent is much more strenuous than the climb. Thank you. And this last poem I'm going to read to you is a little bit longer one, but the last straw of this whole thing was I was going to go to Mexico City with a friend of mine. We were going to drive from LA all the way down to Mexico City in my Fiat. I had this little Fiat 128, and the two of us were going to try to go all the way down. Sergio, the guy who's not here, I really know. Anyway, he backed out of this thing. Margot was going to school at the university in Mexico City. And we had talked before, I said, I'll try to come down and see you. Like it's no big deal, just hop on, go down to Mexico City, right? But I was determined to do this. Anyway, Sergio did not go. And I didn't end up driving. I ended up taking the bus. So I went all the way down to Mexico City. And when I got there, she was with somebody else. So I made this 2,000-mile trek to go see the woman I loved. And got there, and it turned into really one of the most meaningful and beautiful experiences of my life, in spite of what I found when I got there.
She was
so
with
this
Sergio.
poem, huh?
She was with Sergio.
No, she was not with Sergio. Anyway, this one is about that experience. I wrote it on the 30th anniversary of when I went down there in July of '72. It's in 6 sections, and it's called Remembrance of a Journey to Mexico. 1. The Greyhound rolling down the coast from LA to the border. I walk across to Tijuana in the middle of the night and on to the Mexican terminal to board Tres Estrellas de Oro. Out ahead, the frontier is hiding in the night. I am the solo gringo for the next 2,000 miles. The backs of heads bobbing, faces fixed like masks, frozen to their expressions, nodding off in the bedless dark. Morning, checkpoint in Sonora. Everyone is ordered off the bus. I thought I lost my visa, but I left it on the seat inside the book I was reading. It was Siddhartha. They let me pass after I showed them all my traveler's checks. Hermosillo, Obregon, Mazatlan, past an ocean of agave in the highlands, past the barren hills rolling endlessly like the unbroad breasts of women on their backs. A stop for refrescos in some small town whose name I forget, humid and dingy and matter-of-fact. Children play in the dirt alongside abandoned railroad cars. These realities are only my atmospheres. I am the moving center of this wilderness. Guadalajara, large and active, munificently officious, transfer point. A quick meal in the nearby restaurant before the next bus departs. There is only time for thinking. Everything I need is in my pockets. What am I doing here? What do I expect? It is so beautiful to be so alone. 2. Mexico, DF. $20 for a $5 taxi ride because I miscalculate the rate of exchange. Watermelon juice from a corner stand. Universidad Iberoamericano. There she is with some friends. She's shocked to see that I'd really come. She introduces everyone. Doug's the guy who's hanging on her arm. 2,000 miles to come to this. Doug sizes up what's going on. We make the best of the embarrassment. Margot is so beautiful again, and I'm so lost. Love is such puny recompense. The only triumph of my desire is this new and undesired experience. Her friend Vicky is a presence, sad and lovely and serene. I room with locals living at 20 Cerro de Chapulin with the egghead from Indiana. He kicks my ass at chess. Downtown to explore the city together, we stopped to see someone's friend, the expatriate folk musician, at his apartment near Bellas Artes, living with his Siamese cats. Next day, I take a paddle boat out onto the lake at Chapultepec Park. For the moment, the revolution is over. The metro stops, the suffocating city streets. I walk silently among the tribes, pretending we're all civilized. Aztec, Toltec, Olmec, take me up your steps, lead me to your altar. Aztec, Toltec, Olmec, so many hearts left uneaten. 3. San Miguel de Allende has won out over Oaxaca, the place we decide to go to celebrate some festival of liberation. We arrive by train. The town is quaint and lovely, tranquil and clean, almost theatrical, an affront to John Huston. Posada de las Monjas, a charming little room, blue tile in the bathroom from floor to ceiling. Little old men, Disneyfied for the turistas, sandaled and sombreroed, sweeping out the squares in their bright serapes. Sweet pineapple and coconut at the mercado. Any man-made object ever imagined is here and available and made of onyx. A few uninterruptedly indolent days, then we take a bus back to Mexico City. The soft green tinted windows stop and frame the sky about to open behind some thunderheads in a momentary suspension of every other thing outside of us. This little box of beams, diminutive upon the countryside. Blood is a river that loves to run. Until I end, there is no burial ground for the carcass of the senses. My place is in almost everything, and the moment is no mistake. 4. The last few days, a nighttime excursion and an exercise in vertigo, walking outside the observation deck of the Latin American building. Shopping at the marketplace near Hidalgo. Through the thick, gray, noxious air, the volcano is invisible. Failed to see the Diego Riveras and Chichen Itza. 10 days, and I have said so little to her. If my heart could speak, it would say, we blew it again this time, but this time it's okay. My heart keeps quiet. Silence is an empire. Its song is its own century. I sing to myself what is left unsaid. School is out. We synchronize our departures, some directly back to the States, others off on small adventures. Vicky is heading home. Doug is going to swim and do some surfing in Zihuatanejo. Margot is off with Doug. The train pulls out of Mexico City Station, a pleasant Pullman to Guadalajara, finally at the Ferrocarril. I have a photograph of Vicky, solitary in her berth, with all her blondness, looking sad, looking sweetly out the window. The moment is no mistake. It is ours forever. 5. In Guadalajara, we detrain and go our own ways. The goodbyes are heartfelt and awkward. I drag my suitcase and the 3-foot circular mirror that I bought, made out of black cast iron and paper mache, into the second-class compartment on the next train for the final run to Mexicali. The mirror hangs above me at my desk, now as I write, now as I remember. The air conditioning breaks down in the middle of the desert, halfway to the border. The windows are solid, don't open. I almost go broke buying Pepsis for hours. Spend slightly better quality moments in the hot but bearable air on the platform between the cars. Roasted corn on the cob at our stop in Obregon. The vendor rubs the shit out of it with powdered chili. A sudden attack of the runs and my ass is aflame for the next 4 hours. The rest of the way to the terminus of Mexicali is as barren as a lunar landscape, only brighter. Not even the blight of cactus to make the scenery less unbearable. That whole stretch of terrain, a denuded movement that memory turns into nothingness, an evasion of presences, an insignificance of actualities. Where is the love I felt at this beginning? Where its anticipated amplifications? Where has it gone, that just discovered human terrain? Blood is a river that loves to run. There is only time for thinking. 6. A fanfare of horns and interspersed arribas fade in the air inside the taxicab to Calexico. Radio Mundo. The driver is a dedicated listener and keeps it on all the way to the border. Mexico meets California, and I walk across through customs. All is in order. It's a short walk to the Greyhound station, where I will begin the final arc of the return full circle. Up through El Centro and the Imperial Valley, past the vast, glistening grayness of the Salton Sea, up to Interstate 10. Sergio is waiting to pick me up at the depot in downtown LA. How strange it feels to be floating on this familiar ocean of soil. Margot, I no longer love you. I no longer need you anymore. I have been amputated from my innocence, stripped of the tender meat of my long adolescence. I have been remade. The world begins today. The world begins to howl me on to my next arrival, my next departure. My place is in almost everything. There are new lands up ahead, and each one will be Margoless. New lands waiting to bless me.